again today. We've got from the last chapter of the book of Proverbs, Proverbs 31, verses 10 to 31. We have Psalm 1, numero uno Psalm, another reading from James, and then Mark, chapter 9. So let's get to it, starting out with the reading in Proverbs. Now, most of what we get in the book of Proverbs, I believe I talked about this last week when I talked about the woman, the wisdom as the woman. Well, in our book of Proverbs, as we have it canonically, the last chapter is, well, you've got to look at actually the first verse of it. We only are doing verses 10 to 31, but it really would behoove us to take into consideration the first verse of chapter 31, because it kind of tells us the context of why we're getting what we're getting. Yeah. The words of King Lemuel, an oracle that his mother taught him. Okay. So this is one of the rare voices, female voices, if you will, that we actually hear in Scripture. This one is definitely coming from the mouth of, in fact, it's even being said so much. And look at, if we look at I'm going to read the first 9 verses because they're kind of good. No, my son. No, son of my womb, no, son of my vows, do not give your strength to women, your ways to those who destroy kings. It is not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, or for rulers to desire strong drink, or else they will drink and forget what has been decreed, and will pervert the rights of all the afflicted. Give strong drink to the one who is perishing, and wine to those in bitter distress. Let them drink and forget their poverty and remember their misery no more. Speak out for those who cannot speak, for the rights of all the destitute. Speak out, judge. Speak out, judge righteously. Defend the rights of the poor and the needy. So this is like advice coming from mom, right? Well, this is fitting with the theme of wisdom as woman, the voice of a woman, the personification of a woman. And it is this woman's voice that is still speaking when we turn to the passage that that's in our reading for this week. So it's actually the verses 10 through 31, which is the last 22 verses of the book of Proverbs. Okay. Now, one thing we want to remember that we got here is an acrostic. What is an acrostic? Well, an acrostic is a poem that uses each letter in the alphabet in succession to begin each of its sentences. There are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. And guess what? We got 22 verses. Yeah. So a lot of the subject material has to do with what fits the acrostic. This isn't the only acrostic we have in Scripture, but this is definitely one of the more interesting, shall we say. Here we go. A capable wife, who can find? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. Remember, this is the voice of a woman that is saying this to King Lemuel, okay? She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from far away. She rises while it is still night and provides food for her household and tasks her servant girls. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. Okay, I'm going to stop there and do some explication before we move on. So that's the first 9 verses, 10 through 18. So, obviously, the kind of woman that King Lemuel's mother is putting forth is this very productive woman. I mean, she is not just she's not this, okay. When I was taking my Old Testament survey courses in seminary, I had a professor who said he once heard a sermon from a preacher who used this text to describe, to talk about what a woman's place is, okay? And it wasn't one of those, wasn't exactly what you might call a woke kind of a sermon. It definitely dealt with stereotypical roles for women and such. This description, this idealized description that we get here in Proverbs 31, it ain't that. It's not the stereotypical woman's thing. It is. This is a very industrious person. This is not anything that of a male-dominated kind of a woman. That's what the preacher was talking about. That my teachers said that it's like this. This passage doesn't say anything like that. It's very unstereotypical, and the woman is not in that role. Well, this is a very productive woman, somebody who knows what she's doing, okay? And she's never, she has a very strong work ethic, if you will, right? Obviously. Notice that she's even buying land, which don't really see women doing that a lot. The fact that it mentions that she provides food for her household and tasks for her servant girls, this is a little bit of a wealthy woman kind of a thing, okay, that King Lemuel's mother is teaching him. This is a wealthy woman. This is a woman the woman of a king, the wife of a king, because he is king, right? Yes, there you go. So, the last thing there where it says, mentions about her lamp not going out at night. Remember the parable Jesus told of the maidens, the virgins, and the lamps, and some of them didn't bring enough oil, and one did, or something like that. And this is an expression that you use to describe somebody who really does think ahead and make a plan and follow through with it. So her lamp does not go out at night. That's why she thinks ahead. Verse 19, she puts her hands to the distaff and her hands hold the spindle. When you're weaving, when you're making textiles, cloth, you have the spindle, which is doing the spinning, and there's another thing that holds the unspun fiber. Kind of looks like cotton candy, like a cotton candy holder, okay, if you will. That's what a distaff is, okay? So she's making her own textiles, her own, this is what people did back then, okay? She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. So not only does she know how to make stuff and buy stuff and do stuff, she's also got a heart of gold. She is not afraid for her household when it snows, for all her household are clothed in crimson. If you're clothed in crimson, you're not doing too badly in this day and age, okay? Snow, really, in the desert. Interesting. Okay. So we don't know exactly what metaphorical snow, I don't know. Verse 22. She makes herself coverings. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Again, fine linen and purple. This is an upper class type of a thing, okay? I know, yes, but she's talking to her husband, her son, who's a king. So of course, it's going to reflect values of that segment of society, okay? Her husband is known in the city gates, taking his seat among the elders of the land. This is what kings did. She makes linen garments and sells them. She supplies the merchant with sashes. So she is long sought out. Everybody knows she's the go-to person. It's like you can get your stuff from her. Strength and dignity are her clothing. And she laughs at the time to come. Laughing at the time to come is a way of saying that you have made such good use of your time now that you have no room to fret. There's nothing to fret about, okay? She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She can even teach stuff. She's not only industrious and she's got the heart of gold, but she's smart. Love it. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. She ain't got no time. Her children rise up and call her happy, her husband too, and he praises her. Yes, this is an idealized portrait, okay? A very idealistic picture. It fits in with the theme of the woman, the wisdom being personified as a woman. Now, think about it. This is such an idealized picture of a woman here that it's like, oh, maybe that's what is being described is the personage of the wisdom female in the like we had in the first 9 chapters of Proverbs. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. This is she's quoting what her husband says of her. Charm is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Good advice, right? Give her a share in the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the city gates. So this idealized portrait of a woman is another way of making wisdom attractive to the male. The idea that if a man is hooked up with wisdom, that how can he fail? Okay, and that's one of the major emphases that we have in the book of Proverbs, is that if we make wisdom a part of our life, who we are, wear it like a garment, okay, well, how about if we marry it? How about if wisdom were our consort in life? This is all about the idealization of how much better everything can be if guys would only make the right choices, right? Okay, all right, yeah. So, we're moving on. Psalm 1. Psalm 1 is a psalm that I believe is intentionally put as the first psalm because it is paradigmatic of the rest of the psalms. It's a wisdom psalm. Look at this. Psalm 1. It only has 6 verses. I'm going to be reading it from the Book of Common Prayer version. Happy are they who have not walked in the counsel of the wicked, nor lingered in the way of sinners, nor sat in the seats of the scornful. Their delight is in the law of the Lord, and they meditate on his law day and night. Okay, so it sounds, I mean, you could almost, if you didn't know you're reading the Psalms, you'd think, oh, this sounds like something from Proverbs. There's this wisdom theme that we're doing. Even in our James thing is still dealing with wisdom. But notice the idealized picture it paints of the fact that it tells you where you don't go, okay? It tells you, happy are they who have not walked, not lingered, not sat, okay? All of that. A lot of this comes out of experience, okay? To delight in the law of the Lord, remember whenever we have the word law is the word in Hebrew Torah, which means instruction, right? So the delight is in the instruction of the Lord, and they meditate on his law. The word for meditate is they would read out loud, okay? When we think of meditate, we think of and crossing the legs and all that, and meditate and thinking, and no, they read it out loud. This is a practice you will still find today. I saw it when going to Jerusalem. When was that? In 2017, I think it was. Yeah, 2017. People, they're standing around. They're reading they're like rocking it. They're in a chair, and they're like, and they're reading it out loud, reading it out loud. That's the way. That was the active way of reading Scripture. That's the word for meditate. So it's not like meditate like we think of meditate. Day and night. A lot of the wisdom stuff, where it nails it, where it's trying to go with it, is saying, you get your nose in the right kind of literature. You make sure you're putting the right information in your brain that is actually going to help you. Think about all the useless things that we put in our brains today. Television, Facebook, stupid cable news shows. Verse 3, they are like trees planted by streams of water. Who are? We're talking about the people whose delight is in the law of the Lord and meditate on it day and night. They are like trees planted by streams of water, bearing fruit in due seasons, with leaves that do not wither. Everything they do shall prosper. This is a very idealized, I know, because we know that it's not all poppycock and yodel fun. It's like you don't have to. Why does evil happen to good people? Why do bad things happen to good people, right? This psalm, this wisdom psalm, seems to be saying, hey, this is your key to not having to ever deal with bad things happening to good people. But yet, we know life is different than that. But this gives us a goal. This gives us a target. This gives us an anchoring, an orientation, an intention. And without that intention, there's no way we're going to accidentally get there. We've got to have the right intention. And that's going to be something we're going to hear in James here in a bit. They're like bearing fruit. So the plants trees planted by streams of water. Verse 4, it is not so with the wicked. They are like chaff, which the wind blows away. Do you get the contrast? Talking about being like trees planted by streams of water versus chaff with the wind blowing away. Little like not making any progress as opposed to ascending. That picture of being a tree versus being something that's wafting in the wind. Nice poetic imagery, yes. They are like the chaff which the wind blows away. Therefore, The wicked shall not stand upright when judgment comes, nor the sinner in the counsel of the righteous. So here's that thing about standing upright. The wicked, they haven't done what they need to do. They haven't put that's right. You know, they haven't exposed themselves to the kind of teaching that's going to make a difference for them. Therefore, the wicked shall not stand upright when judgment comes, nor the sinner in the counsel of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked is doomed. Yes, this comes across as advice, as wisdom, and we know it's a little Pollyanna-ish, right? Because we do know that bad things do happen to good people, but yet this teaches us how to orient ourselves so that we put ourselves in the right position so we can prosper and recognize it. All right, got to move on. 21 minutes in, I got to get to James and Mark. James chapter 3, verses 13 to chapter 4, verse 3, and then verses 7 and 8a. This is our passage. I'm going to be reading it without the missing verses because we just don't have time to deal with all of it. Who is wise and understanding among you? So here again, remember, see, more of this wisdom stuff. Remember what James is. James isn't an occasional letter like a lot of what we have in Scripture from that we call epistles. This is a writing of, I call it a writing of early Christian wisdom, okay? A lot of good advice, a lot of good, just downright good common sense. Who is wise and understanding among you? Show by your good life that your works are done with gentleness born of wisdom. So it's kind of like, the question is like, you could rephrase it to say like, if you are going to be wise and understanding, show by your good life that your works are done with gentleness born of wisdom. Tell you what, this is a good thing to look for in who we like to elect to elected office. Look for, show by your good life that your works are done with gentleness born of wisdom. Not a bad litmus test, do you think, for politicians? But if you have bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not be boastful and false to the truth. Boing. Such wisdom does not come down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, devilish. Yeah. For where there is envy and selfish ambition, there will also be disorder and wickedness of every kind. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without a trace of partiality or hypocrisy. And again, isn't this just wonderful? I don't know why I'm thinking in terms of like, look for this in people we vote for, but I don't know, that's where I'm at on that. And a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace for those who make peace. Those conflicts and disputes among you, where do they come from? Do they not come from your cravings that are at war within you? You want something and do not have it, so you commit murder. And you covet something and cannot obtain it, so you engage in disputes and conflicts. You do not have because you do not ask. And you ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly in order to spend what you get on your pleasures. He's saying basically that your motivations are off. This is just basically good. I can't really add a whole lot. I'm not going to add a whole lot to this. It's just, it's a good place to check yourself. A good place to check yourself and what we expect in others. especially those we put in office. Submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. So the writer here is giving us a way of orienting ourselves, a way of how do we position ourselves, just like the psalmist was doing in his wisdom psalm, and in the teaching about the perfect woman from King Lemuel's mother, putting yourself in the right position, making sure that you are creating a context for your success. You've got to create a context for you to thrive in. You can't just let it be haphazard. You got to put some intentionality behind it in order for you to experience success, to thrive, if you will. Okay? Mark. We are in Mark chapter 9, verses 30 to 37. Jesus and his disciples passed through Galilee. He did not want anyone to know it, for he was teaching his disciples, saying to them, "The Son of Man is to be betrayed into human hands, and they will kill him. And 3 days after being killed, he will rise again." But they did not understand what he was saying and were afraid to ask him. This is great. They didn't understand what he's saying, and they were afraid to ask. I think one of the reasons why they were afraid to ask is because they were afraid that he actually meant what he was saying, and they believed his words. They didn't think he was crazy. They actually believed what he said, and they were afraid because they didn't think he was crazy. They didn't want to follow a crazy person, so they were afraid to ask because they were afraid that he was actually telling the truth, and their minds just couldn't wrap around how his life could go the way he's predicting, saying he would, that he's going to be killed, and 3 days after, then rise again. Is like they're like, you see, the only belief in resurrection back then. Yes, the resurrection. There were some who did believe in resurrection, but resurrection was something that would happen at the last day. It wasn't an individual level. It wasn't something that would happen to any individuals. It was something like there was a belief in a resurrection, like an end time resurrection. But for him to say that he was going to die and then 3 days later be raised, it's like the disciples just couldn't get their brains wrapped around it. But where were their brains? Let us continue. Then they came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, "What were you arguing about on the way?" But they were silent, for on the way they had argued with one another who was the greatest. He sat down, called the 12, and said to them, okay, so now we find out why they didn't understand and why they were afraid to ask him, because they had already started making plans for themselves. They started thinking about what's in it for me. Following this Jesus, kind of thing like, this could be good for us. We need to hitch our wagon to this guy, and this could turn out really well for us. So therefore, who will it turn out best for? And so they were all speculating, and this is what we were told that what they were arguing about, right? Well, so Jesus has to put in a corrective. He sat down, called the 12, and said to them, "Whoever wants to be first must be last of all and servant of all." if you think about it, he's describing himself, right? Whoever wants to be first must be last of all and servant of all, because Jesus knew that his work was to be servant of all. And he wasn't putting himself first. He wasn't arguing for his glorification, his magnificence, Jesus Christ superstar style. No. He knew that he had a job to do, and that was to be a servant of all by doing what he was going to be doing. Then he took a little child and put it among them, and taking it in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes not me, but the one who sent me." Okay. When we think about children, especially in this first century Middle Eastern context, ancient Near East, children didn't have the rights they did. We look at children today, oh, they're just so precious and they're just so innocent and we have child protective laws and that. They didn't have any of that stuff back then. Kids were considered like a nuisance, and they had no rights, they had no privileges, they had nobody on their side. They represented those things in life that we complain about. It's like, got to get that away from me. The best thing that could happen to a child was like, well, they'll grow out of it. They're gonna grow out of it, and that's the way they were back then. There was no enlightened child psychology things going on. There was no protection from the government and that kind of thing. Jesus took a little child. That's what he took. Okay, somebody who had no rights, somebody who had no status, somebody had no ain't got nothing going on in the world. Whoever welcomes a child in my name welcomes me. Oh. So you've got to have a big heart to welcome a child. You have to have a big heart. No, that didn't really exist back then. All right? So what they symbolized was no rights, no status. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. So when we open up our heart to the dispossessed of life, in our day and age, it might not be children. It's probably more like immigrants, people who don't look like us, even people that them dying illegals. Well, guess what? Whoever welcomes one such child, somebody with no rights, somebody with no status, in my name, welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me welcomes not me, but the one who sent me. This is our access. Jesus is teaching us that this is our access to God. You want to know how, you want to know how to experience God? Start opening yourself up to situations where you can experience what it's like to be God. This is what he's saying. Whoever welcomes me, you're welcoming God when you welcome the dispossessed, because God experiences that with us. Okay? Wow. There's some good stuff in this one, but I am not going to take any more time. That is it for this Sunday Power Bible Study. I don't know, maybe I need to think about a name change for it if I'm going to release it. I am going to post, it is going to come on again at 9 a.m. on Sundays, but I don't know, maybe I should do it at 8. Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, Saturday nights at 6. I think that's good. We're gonna keep going with that. So we'll see. We'll see if I come up with something on the name change. Our Sunday Power Bible Study. Until next time, peace.